Earlier, we talked about the differences between countries and states and cities. And I see from our work that a lot of us didn't quite understand that concept. So I'm going to simplify this lesson, and we're just going to talk about the state of Louisiana. All right? Our country is divided into 50 different states. These are all of them. But we're just going to talk about the state of Louisiana, the state that you live in, Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is still a big place, and it's divided into smaller areas called parishes. So just like our country is divided into different states, our state is divided into parishes. These are all parishes in Louisiana. You saw a map like this on your benchmark that asked, what does this map show you? Well, the answer is it shows us the parishes of Louisiana. Each little patch is a different parish, a different area of land. Here's another map that shows us the parishes of Louisiana. So Louisiana is all of this here. Each parish is just one small area of Louisiana. We live over here in Orleans Parish. Now, when we look even closer, inside the parishes are cities. New Orleans is one city, Baton Rouge is another city, Lafayette is another city, and Lake Charles is another city. Cities are just dots on the map. They're smaller than parishes. They're much smaller than the state. Now, cities are urban communities. Urban communities are communities that have big buildings, lots of people. Oftentimes, there's not room for yards and things like that, so people live in apartment buildings. They use subways, trains, and buses to get around because there's not much room for parking. Now, when you leave our urban community, on the edges of our urban community, we'll find suburban communities. So people who don't like all the mess of the big city, all the buses, trains, things like that, will live outside the city in a suburban community. Suburban communities are a little more spaced out, so there's less people. There's room for yards and driveways, and there's still stores, but not as many as in an urban community. Now, what's in between our different urban communities? If our urban communities are just dots on the map, then what's in between in all this open space? Well, in this open space, we find rural communities. Rural communities are found between the different cities. You leave the city, you pass the suburban community on the edge of the city, and then you get out into the country. Things are much more spread out. People don't use buses or subways or streetcars to get around because things are too spread out. This is where you're going to find farms, wide open areas, lots of wildlife like trees and animals. Those are going to be found in your rural communities. Now think about how different this is from our urban communities with big buildings, lots of people. Very big differences between our urban communities and our rural communities. Now, you're going to be asked to find different cities in different parts of the state. So I gave you a political map that's going to show you cities and borders. If I gave you a physical map that showed you what the land is like, then that wouldn't help you name cities. So I decided to give you a political map. Now, some questions are going to ask you to name cities. The cities are the dots on your map, okay? So if I was looking for a city in South Louisiana, I might look to Lake Charles or Lafayette. Now, some questions are going to ask you to find states. States are much bigger. This is all the state of Louisiana. And a question might ask you which state is west of Louisiana. So you're going to have to leave the state of Louisiana and go west to Texas. Texas is the state to the west of Louisiana. Now, if you have trouble with your directions, I want to remind you, you have your compass rose to help you. So this is what I use to tell me that Lafayette and Lake Charles are in South Louisiana, because they're in the direction that the arrow is pointing that says south. And that's also how I knew that Texas is over to the west. My arrow pointing west points this way, and Texas is on this side of Louisiana. All right? You're going to have a worksheet that you fill out. I want you to use your compass rose and your political map to answer these questions, naming cities and states and where they're located. These skills are so important. They're going to help us moving forward. We're going to be able to do a lot of more exciting things once we have these skills mastered. All right? Do a great job, and I'll see you tomorrow.